On your screen is a picture of Douglas Murray, Richard Dawkins, Lawrence Krauss and Stephen Fry. They gathered together recently to remember Christopher Hitchens. I think we all remember Christopher Hitchens. He was probably the first intellectual YouTube rock star, biting wit and a very bright man with it. But it does beg the question, looking at this picture, whether New Atheism is now over. Do note here I'm speaking about new atheism, not atheism itself. We can see across the West that belief is still quite low. However, new atheism was marked by a particularly aggressive brand of militancy that presented itself as the worldview of the eminently reasonable people, pragmatic modern man free of historical irrationalities. As we look back over the past couple of decades, we can see that the hyper-rational myth-free worldview of modern man hasn't created a better and saner world. In fact, things are weirder than ever nowadays. It could be argued that the removal of our tradition and meta-narrative, that's our cultural mythology, left the West defenceless against new alien forms of ideology. That would be wokeism in one sense, globalist liberalism in another, along with the mass immigration and multiculturalism that comes as standard. After all, what does it matter to new atheists whether the West is stocked with Christians or Muslims? It's all flying spaghetti monsters to them anyway. But there is a problem that's occurred. If we go back to our original picture, we can see many of these men have had complaints about the modern world. Stephen Fry complains about political correctness. Richard Dawkins has said he's a cultural Christian, and it's sad to see our Christian culture eroding around us. Douglas Murray has been writing about the strange death of Europe. It seems there's an irony at play here then. The very reason we're lost in woke political correctness, our Christian culture is declining and Europe is dying, is because we've lost our tradition, something the new atheists were very eager to attack. Even when you look at one of the YouTube intellectual rock stars of today, you'll find he's the polar opposite of Christopher Hitchens. I'm talking, of course, of Jordan Peterson. He's done everything he can to try and reawaken the Western tradition, whether you like him or loathe him, and young men have flocked to him in their millions because they've grown up without any sense of meaning, without any understanding of their own cultural inheritance. Yet Dawkins and Peterson butted heads recently in a debate where Peterson was getting increasingly agitated because Richard Dawkins refuses to acknowledge any truth that might be symbolic or metaphorical.
You've analogized the dragon fight to
how many dragons have
Satan.
you overcome in your life?
I'm not interested in dragons, I'm interested in reality.
This question of reality is central to the survival or death of the West. In Dawkins' worldview, that worldview of an atheist materialist, the only things that are real are things that can be quantified, data points, things that can be empirically proved. Now this is all well and good in a materialist universe, but one of the great flaws of the atheist argument is how on earth we got here in the first place. What is life? Who created it? And why? The human mind and science cannot answer such questions. They might be able to tell you how the universe came into being, but not why. Why is there life rather than there not being life? That's the key question. This is important because it undermines the core of the new atheist position itself. That is, that they are rationalists, that they're going to look at the world pragmatically. However, life itself, the event of life, is an irrational and non-rational event. Therefore, you're trying to superimpose rationality in an irrational frame. It's often seemed to me the new atheists don't want to address the miraculousness of life because it doesn't suit their worldview. They are, after all, scientists mostly. They're not philosophically minded, and that means they don't really answer the key philosophical questions that the West faces. Now, atheist philosophers have strived to answer that question. Albert Camus is probably the most famous example. He admitted that it was irrational to claim rationality when you can't explain a rational cause of life. He called that state absurdism. And his advice to the West was essentially, well, you're just going to have to bear that, do the best you can to take it on and the inconsistencies logically, but enjoy your life. Have women, drink booze, have nice food, that sort of thing. Now you could argue that this is what Western man has done. He tries to create his own sense of meaning, he looks out for his own wants and needs, and tries to get pleasure where he can. But there's one big problem, and that's that it doesn't align to a deeper resonance within. Our hyper-scientific world can do many wonderful things, but it can't speak to our soul. As the late Roger Scruton once sagely put it, brain scans can't tell us what love is. So it seems that we're missing a key part of who we are as human human beings. Carl Jung also spoke about this. He once said, "Through scientific understanding, our world has become dehumanized. Man feels himself isolated in the cosmos. He is no longer involved in nature and has lost his emotional participation in natural events which hitherto had a symbolic meaning for him. He no longer has a bush soul identifying him with a wild animal. His immediate communication with nature is gone forever, and the emotional energy it generated has sunk into the unconscious." By desacralizing the West, we've created the lost men of modernity. People are doing meaningless jobs they don't really care about, they feel they're in a meaningless universe, and they content themselves with passing pleasures. This lack of the transcendent, of a deep sense of meaning and orientation in the world, is the core reason that the West is dying. It's lost its purpose, it's lost its vitality. I think this is why New Atheism may well be coming to an end. It's because it hasn't created this happy utopian world of scientific-minded people coursing into the future. Instead, it's created a disillusioned mass of people, and people who are prone to getting overtaken by foreign ideologies. To me, all of this points to the death and rebirth I speak a lot about on this channel, and that means that we will have a reawakening to the heart and the soul, as well as the mind. To me, this is absolutely vital if the Western world and the Westerners within it are to regain their sense of vitality. They are to rejoin history and start creating something once more. As I say, I believe that this starts in each of us as individuals, and that's why I intend to make more content focusing on individual personal and spiritual development in the future. These are just my thoughts, however. Do let me know what you think down below. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.